What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and I hope you're all doing well today. The 9.2 PTR's first build of 2022 went live this week, and with it, several changes have been put in for testing. The most noteworthy things that I was keen on testing were the tier set changes that were made for both Outlaw and Assassination, as each of these set bonuses had some less than desirable effects originally. In this video, I'll be covering the Assassination changes and what I think of them, but don't worry, I'll also be covering the Outlaw changes in an upcoming video probably right after this one's put together. Assassination's tier set for patch 9.2 revolves around both the Shiv ability and the major cooldown spell Vendetta. In its original iteration, the set bonus was very single target focused. The 2 set would cause whatever you hit with Shiv to get an increased 25% crit chance on any bleed effects for 9 seconds. This was not all that great of a damage gain, as bleeds only make up a small chunk of our overall damage, and neglected the poison aspect of the spec entirely. And as I mentioned earlier, it has zero impact on any multi-target situations, which is kind of the Achilles heel of this original iteration of the Assassination tier set. Meanwhile, the 4 set effect causes your bleeds and poisons to tick 100% faster on whatever target you apply the Vendetta debuff to. In comparison to both Outlaw and Subtlety's bonuses, this combination of increased bleed and poison damage and the speed of it when you Shiv or Vendetta a target is very one-dimensional, as it gives no incentive in multi-target or AoE situations at all. Thankfully, a tweak has been made to the 2 set that helps shivved things into a more multi-target friendly perk. Get it? Shivved. Because Shiv and Shift sound kinda... Oh, okay, fine, it wasn't that funny, I know. But yeah, the 2 set still buffs the Shiv ability, however it now increases poison and bleed damage by 100% to all targets within 15 yards of whatever you hit with Shiv for 9 seconds. While Shiv is a relatively lengthy 25-second cooldown in the grand scheme of rogue abilities with no cooldowns, the damage bonus lasts for 9 seconds, so if you hit Shiv directly on cooldown as soon as it's up, which we try to as much as we can, then you'll have a 36% uptime on this damage boost for your bleeds and poisons to literally every target around whatever you hit Shiv with. So this overall is just an incredibly awesome source of increased damage, like really good. Nothing has changed about the 4 set bonus in this build, however, some other players and theory crafters have noted that it is actually ideal to refresh as many of your bleeds as you can right before the Vendetta buff falls off, because even after it falls off, those bleeds are still affected by it. Gameplay-wise, that is probably the only thing that changes really anything, since it kind of makes you want to refresh things even if it doesn't need to be refreshed yet. But overall, it's pretty much the same, since all it does is incentivize keeping your bleeds up and refreshed on as many targets as we're able to, and applying Vendetta and Shiv to high health or priority targets to get the most benefit of all the stacking damage amps between Shiv and Vendetta, plus the well-placed steel conduit and all the set effects. Legendary choice-wise, Duskwalker's patch is looking to be a rising contender for our new best legendary, as we'll want to get even more damage amp windows out of our Vendetta with that 100% faster bleed and poison ticks. Getting Vendetta down to a 1-minute-ish cooldown would let it line up pretty nicely with the Flagellation ability, since we'll also have the Obedience legendary effect as our second power if we still are Venthyr. This overall should give a pretty bursty feel to damage output, while not suffering outside of cooldown windows nearly as much as our Subtlety Rogue counterparts do. Unfortunately, as of this video, double legendaries still aren't able to be tested, so it's a bit up in the air outside of preliminary simulations and theory crafting shenanigans that the folks over at Ravenholt have been doing to give us an early approximation of overall Covenant performance. I imagine we haven't seen the last of tuning and design iterations on tier sets though, as several classes and effects still have numerous things not quite working right with their set bonuses, or are a bit out of or in tuning either over or underperforming in numbers. It's hard to say exactly how much damage percent gain Blizzard expects a tier set to give a class, but if domination shards were anything to go off of, then I'd imagine they want to sit around a 16-17-ish% gain, and that would be a fair overall performance increase along with item level gains to be had by any class's tier sets. And some classes and specs are sitting quite a bit higher and lower than that in some cases. Overall, I'm actually pretty happy that for once it seems the dev team has listened to early feedback from the Rogue community, as the lack of any AoE impact on the original iteration for Assassination was a pretty big red flag for most of us that have been keeping tabs on the PTR development cycle. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we saw a bit of tuning number-wise done for the 2 set, as it feels really potent even on small like 4 or 5 target pulls, since it's pretty hard to find any key groups on the PTR to test like huge AoE trash pulls like we normally do in Mythic Plus. Having literally everything be hit for 100% more poison and bleed damage in any target situation when you're spamming Crimson Tempests and keeping Garrots and Ruptures on a bunch of ads is sure to be a potent amount of burst damage every time Shiv is active, while still also being really good in low target or single target encounters like boss fights for keys or raid. Heck, I imagine this set'll probably be pretty darn good in PvP at this point as well. It's also going to open up the possibility of new legendaries being strong choices like Duskwalker's patch for the reduced cooldown of Vendetta. I really hope we see the double legendaries soon though, as I can't imagine patch 9.2 coming out any later than like March, so it'd be nice to have some time to test of how this will all come together with multiple legendaries and Covenant abilities too. Anyways, that's about it for this peek into the Assassination set changes on the 9.2 PTR for now. I hope you folks enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to leave a like or maybe a comment about your thoughts on Assassination moving into the next patch, or any of the other rogue stuff you want to talk about really. It's always my favorite subject, and I like hearing other people's ideas and thoughts on it. As always, my appreciation and gratitude to all of my viewers, and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.